Here at the Toasty Bros, we've been benchmarking and testing some really weird hardware lately, from the BioStar motherboard that comes with a built-in CPU that's actually soldered to the board, to a mobile graphics card that's actually soldered to a desktop graphics card. And today, well, we have to give a big special thanks to a member of our Discord server, Uncertain Logic, for hooking us up with some more stuff to mess around with. And more specifically today, we're going to be taking a look at another one of those mobile graphics cards in a desktop graphics card. It's kind of weird. Is it worth it? I don't know. But today, we're going to be checking out the GTX 850M. Can it game in 2019? Well, let's find out. But first, a word from today's sponsor.
Now before we get into this video, we want to let you all know that we're going to be hosting a marathon live stream for Extra Life charities coming up very soon, and Jackson's going to give you the details.
So May 11th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is when it'll start. It'll be 12 hours to start with. Don't forget to be there because it's going to be epic, and if you guys donate enough money, it'll go up to 24 hours, so...
Yes, so for every $50 donation we get all the way up to $600, we could stream from anywhere between 12 hours to 24 hours over on twitch.tv/ToastyBros. So please, if you aren't following the Twitch stream, link in the description down below, and hopefully we will see you all on May 11th.
It'll be exciting.
So this right here is the 850M. Yeah, it doesn't look like much. It actually has some really weird outputs on it. We have a HDMI, DVI, and VGA. Now this thing claims to be an 850M. Now, is it actually an 850M? That is still kinda up in the air. I'm not totally sure if this is legit or not, because it uses some of those custom coolers that those fake graphics cards were using that you could buy off eBay, that were saying they were like a 750 Ti, or they were saying they were like a 1060 3 gig, and then after you purchase them, they ended up being something like a GTX 550 or something on the lower end spectrum like that. But according to this sticker, this is a GTX 850 with 2 gigs of VRAM, a 128-bit bus, and DDR5 memory, and it's PCIe, obviously. So what we're going to do is actually open this thing up real quick and look inside and see what we have to work with, and then we're going to be throwing this thing on my main PC over here at the office with a 10-core Xeon, which if you haven't seen that video, hit the I in the top right corner to check that video out, and we're just going to run through a suite of benchmarks and see what kind of performance we can get from this little guy. Keep in mind, this was sent to me by a member of our Discord server, Uncertain Logic, who's located in China, and he was only able to get this off Taobao, which is a resource that is very hard to get access to if you're in the US. There are middleman services that make it a little bit more easy to get access to things off Taobao, but it's still kind of a complicated process, and as far as I remember, this thing was not priced very fairly to really be considered legitimate, no matter what the performance is. But since he was nice enough to send this in for the sake of science and experimentation here at Toasty Bros HQ, we had to give it a shot. Alright, well looky here, if you can read this model number, it says N15P-GT-A2. Now after doing some research, I actually have come across multiple variations here. So this thing could actually be an 870M, 860M, or an 850M in theory. It appears that model number is just based on the generation of mobile graphics card, but it does appear that this is at least an 800 series mobile chip. Let me go ahead and reapply some thermal paste. The thermal paste application on this thing was not the best and not the worst either, so I'm gonna go ahead and reapply some on here real quick, make it look nice and new, and then load this thing up in my system and see what kind of benchmark numbers we can get. right, let's see if this thing works. There's only an HDMI out, so I can only use the TV that I have above up here that has an HDMI. This VODTech monitor does not have HDMI out, so we're gonna hope that this thing actually boots up. If not, you probably aren't seeing this on YouTube right now. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. We have the Asus logo. And to show that we're not doing anything kind of sketchy, there's the graphics card again, propped in there. And there's my RTX 2060, just chilling. So, yeah, let's see what this thing can do. Now I have a feeling Windows is gonna try and install custom drivers for this, but what I'm gonna do is wait and see. As I'm installing the drivers from NVIDIA's website, we're gonna see if by any chance it actually does install, and if not, we'll just go with these default drivers that you can get right here. A 800 series notebook with an 850M. This should work. I don't know why it wouldn't work. I can always download this driver and find out. But if this is a legit 850M, then after this downloads, this shouldn't have any issues installing, and then we'll know 100% what we got working here. And I was right. Before the drivers even installed, we got Windows default drivers installed. But because I want to make sure this is going to work 100% out of the box, even though the default drivers probably will work perfectly fine, I want to get the GeForce Experience app on here to maybe get some recording done. I'm not sure if I can use the 850M with shadow play, but if I can actually get a better screen capture of benchmarking this graphics card. So that's the hope, is that I can actually use shadow play, but I don't know. So that's why I'm still installing these drivers, even though the Windows ones have already installed. All right, so it appears that GeForce Experience works and I can use shadow play to record these benchmarks. So what I'm gonna do is dive into testing a couple games here, and I will get back with you with the results. Alright guys, so after a few hours of benchmarking, let's discuss the performance numbers for this 850M. I was kind of surprised with how well this thing performed. Now don't get me wrong, this is not a very optimal card and I would not recommend you go out of your way to get it, but in games like Apex Legends on low settings 1080p, you're getting anywhere between 40 to 50 FPS, and then diving into games like CSGO, which was obviously more than playable, you really don't have any problems. With Apex Legends, I didn't feel like I was at that big of a competitive disadvantage on all low settings 1080p. I felt as if I could drop it down to 720p or even 900p, I would be comfortably at 60 FPS with very little stutters. The system was actually rock solid. Those 1% and 0.1% lows and even some of the more demanding games were not bad at all. And that's a good sign, because that shows that this graphics card, while be it low powered, can actually run games at lowish settings without having really bad stuttering. Now PUBG was a different story. On low settings we were getting around 40-ish, 50-ish FPS, and in some cases over 60, but it was still kind of PUBG. It felt very slow, and the game itself, if it's not over 60 FPS, PUBG kind of feels unplayable. It's kind of choppy, and just the way the game engine works, it just doesn't feel good at all when it's under 60 FPS, and I don't really think this card would do that well even if you dropped it below 720p. Now to round out the benchmarks, I decided to test two more titles, CSGO and Far Cry 5. CSGO obviously ran perfectly fine, close to 100 FPS all the time on pro settings. Not something I expected to be a problem. CSGO is very easy to run and is mainly CPU dependent, and as you can tell on the benchmarks, the graphics card didn't even get pinged at 100% usage because it was relying heavily on the processor. Now the reason I tested Far Cry 5 was to push this thing to its absolute limits in what most modern AAA titles will run at. Far Cry 5 is a great example of what AAA titles will be performing like on this kind of hardware, and that is where this thing started to crumble, getting only about 30-ish FPS with some pretty low 1% and 0.1% lows within the Far Cry 5 built-in benchmark utility at low settings. There are two reasons why this happened. One, Far Cry 5 is very VRAM dependent, and a lot of new games coming out are becoming much more VRAM dependent, meaning that you really should have at least 3 GB, if not more, if you're playing at 1080p on lower settings. The 850M only comes with 2 GB of VRAM, which gimps it in a game that requires at minimum 2 GB of VRAM. So it is very much pushing it overall when you're using this even on the lowest settings, and getting 30 FPS is, well, not ideal for a single player game. It's not awful, but it does go to show that this graphics card is more of a 720p graphics card as opposed to 1080p, because even at 1080p, getting 30 FPS is kind of unacceptable in 2019. So what are my conclusions of the 850M mobile graphics card in a desktop form factor? Well, I don't really recommend it. It's an interesting piece of tech that I give a big thanks to Uncertain Logic for sending over, but it's not something I would suggest you go out of your way to try to purchase. It's cool, it's gimmicky, but I will leave links in the description down below if there's something that you may be interested in. You can go check it out and see if you want to buy it. If I were to compare this to a modern graphics card, it would be somewhat in between a 750 and 750 Ti, which you can easily obtain for like 50 or 60 bucks on AliExpress or even cheaper on the used market. So really, it makes this card not really worth purchasing at all. So get those instead if you are considering a budget graphics card option. And that wraps this video up here, guys. If you like this video, leave a like down below and comment 850M in the comment section down below if you made it this far. I would love to know what you all think in the comment section down below, and if you have any other suggestions of very weird cards you've seen on either AliExpress or Taobao that you would like me to check out, I will link up with my contacts and see if I can make it happen. So thanks again, guys, for watching, and hopefully I will see you on the next one. Peace. Poggers.